Hey everyone, this is Mariah with the Ally Center at LBC. Welcome back to the Ally Advantage, where support meets strategy and students thrive. In our podcast, we focus on building confidence, clarity, and skills you can use as an online student. Join us for part two of our episode, Research Process of Pros.
Now, as professionals who are currently in higher education, I want to just provide the opportunity for all of us to share, again, any just additional research tips or guidance about the research process.
I can start. And it's funny because as I'm listening to you guys, I recognize I didn't talk about things that I wouldn't do. You grow with wisdom as you get older. But I think time management is incredibly important,
Yep.
even as, when you are in undergrad space, oftentimes, the main thing is just go in there and get that degree. You're not balancing out a bunch of different things. At least I wasn't, but found myself very busy. And at one point let something actually slip to the last minute, and that cost me. Now I was managing a bunch of other stuff, like full load, and just kind of like, okay, I'll get to it. So even now, I recognize that being able to, when you have a lot more on your plate, that it's very important to prioritize, and just really put boundaries around your time when you have to get something done. I mean, I think it's, you cannot force the writing process. And I think this is where students sometimes they, get stuck in that, they want to plow through it, and there may never be a time, but I do believe that you have to be able to put it down for a minute or an hour
Mm-hmm.
and be able to go back in, because sometimes it's inside of your mind, there's a traffic jam. There are so many thoughts coming at you as it relates to that particular assignment, in addition to all the other things that you may be doing, that there's this pressure like, okay, I'm just going to, and it's not like I said, that there's not like your muse is going to come and you're going to be inspired anyway, but just a recognition of the need to be able to uh, prioritize my time and recognize even in that I may need to take some time away, clear my brain, and come back
Yep.
and do something fresh, rather than
Mm-hmm.
just kind of sitting there and just staring at blank papers. And I know oftentimes I've talked with students and that's been their frustration, like nothing's coming. And and I'm just sitting there, and the longer they sit, the more frustrated they become. So again, um, my advice or wisdom would be, just be able to plan time well, but recognize a part of the plan time is sometimes planning time away from the process.
Yep.
Yes, I was just talking to students about revision and editing, and I actually shared that the first step is to take a break. And I was like, this may be surprising, but being able
Mm-hmm.
to just create space and distance, if possible, if time allows, is just so clarifying for the overall
Mm-hmm.
process.
And to build on that, I think it's also important to use very consistent research sessions. I think
Mm-hmm.
so oftentimes our students are they're like, okay, every day I'm going to do this research and I'm just going to keep writing this. And it's like a back and forth. Um, it might not work for everyone, but it worked for me of saying, okay, maybe like every Tuesday, that was research for this larger project. And I was able to work, I had enough information to get me through that week. I know that might be different from what some of our students can and cannot do based on their work schedule, but I would say set a consistent research time instead of
Mm-hmm.
waiting for, oh, I have 5 to 10 p.m. every night. Like that's a lot of research. You're going to be
Mm-hmm.
exhausted.
Yep.
So that would be like Doc was saying is the time management piece right there. Just another tip is just to set a very clear end goal. Like what
Mm-hmm.
is the goal for this assignment or even today? Hey, I need to complete this. What do I need to do? And if early on, if possible, I would highly recommend reaching out to the Ally Center and getting feedback early on.
Yep.
The longer you wait, it's going to grow into something much more larger. And then who knows, by the time you reach the editing process, you have to go back and redo so much when seeking that feedback early on. You can
Mm-hmm.
take it into small chunks and you can have feedback and a support person like every step of the way. So that's what I
Mm-hmm.
recommend.
And not to mention, just waiting until the end of the subterm, so many students are kind of seeking the
Yeah.
same thing. It may be hard to get an appointment just because,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
just kind of a traffic jam of.
Appointments. Yeah.
Yep. I'll share. This isn't necessarily related to research as far as my insights go, but just kind of the research process, especially when it comes to writing argumentative research. I see a lot of students, and I've struggled with this myself. When it comes to writing their argument down, they have become so inundated with other people's opinions through their research. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to cipher out, like, oh, wait, what do I think? And so
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of students who struggle with, instead of the research supporting their opinion ends up supporting the
Mm-hmm.
research. And so
Mm.
my tip to my students is always, it's great research, but before you really dive into it, get your thoughts down on paper, just a rough
Yeah.
sketch. What do I think about this? What's my opinion? What's my stance? Why do I feel this way? What evidence can I pull just from my own observation and experience and, just knowledge? And then once you've got that concretely written down, then start pulling from your sources information that supports your opinion.
Mm.
That has saved me so many times. And, I've gotten into
Mm-hmm.
that trap of writing a research paper that's really not my opinion at all. It's other people's opinions.
Right.
So that's my two
Yeah.
cents for the day.
Love it.
That's a great point.
Now that I'm not in school anymore, I do actually a lot of research for Bible studies that I lead for my church. So I research things in Ecclesiastes and for Exodus and Genesis and Second Timothy. And so I'm researching quite a bit. Now what's nice is that I have sort of that full autonomy to be able to decide, well, I would like to do a Bible study on this. And so that's the topic that I'm going to select. This is the angle that's sort of I'm working on, and allow that to direct the research I do. Now, oftentimes professors will, there are a lot of papers, even in the undergraduate space, where you get to decide a little bit of, hey, this is the specific direction, the specific subtopic that I'm going to work within maybe an umbrella of topics. And so I would encourage people to pick something that you are interested in. And so if you have the option to pick something that you're interested in versus something that you're like, that's so boring, don't pick the thing that you think that's that's so boring. Whenever I do get into the research though, because it's something that I'm genuinely interested in, I have done this a number of times where I open a book and I'm like, I have a specific question. I'm looking to answer this part of what I'm talking about. And then I look up 2 hours later because I've just read 17,000 pages in a commentary. And I'm like, I can't spend this long on every single one. And so for me, again, to keep that focus, to say, I don't have, even because this is on the side, it's not like I don't have it. I do have a schedule that I'm working toward. And so um, being disciplined and saying, I am looking for specific things. Now, sometimes I do gratify the desires of my heart and I just read for, to find all of the things about Exodus or whatever the case may be. But again, as we're thinking about researching for the purpose, making sure that I've said, okay, I'm going to do this. And even as Dr. McClenton said, and Chantelle said, having those time boundaries to say, okay, I'm going to research this part for this long, and then I'm going to take even a 5-minute break, and I'm going to walk around, I'm going to drink some water, and I'm going to have a little snack. And there's actually brain research that shows that if you take those little breaks, your brain, that's where learning happens, is in the rest periods. And so there may be things that you read in your research that didn't even like click until you take that break. And then those things will hopefully come to the surface. Pomodoro technique, a couple of other things that have helped me in my post-student phase. Because I'm an adult who's not in a traditional undergraduate space where like I can't go to the library and set up in a room anymore and say, well, I'm going to research for this amount of time. Whenever I could, it was fabulous because I was like, that's my research space. Fabulous. It's harder whenever I have baby, dog, husband, bless his heart. But all of these things going on around me. So to be able to have some boundaries in place from like, hey, I'm going over to this dedicated space. It's not my bed. It's not my kitchen table where the snacks are right there, but it's a set aside place where I can remove those distractions, putting my phone in a different room so that I cannot even think about like checking for notifications or for anything else. Has been helpful. So setting up those sort of boundaries around my space is great. Another tip that I have is to allow the trail of ideas to track things down. And so if I'm reading something or if I'm listening to a podcast and they mention, hey, this work by so and so, to be able to use one expert to lead me to other experts. You can do this even in an undergraduate space where you're looking at the reference page of an article that you're looking at, or oftentimes books will have a back section where like, hey, here are all the people that I quoted in the book. It can be helpful to use even things like that to lead you to other places if you found one good source to lead you to another.
Thank you all for sharing. Those were incredible insights. Mariah just shared actually exactly what I was going to say, is that using sources to lead you to other sources and consulting the works cited and references pages and the footnotes. Don't ignore the footnotes. Footnotes are really interesting, and actually it can be really where some nice juicy details reside. So be sure to consult those. Use your sources to help you and to support your process and to help you engage in the scholarly conversation, because it can be easy to select a topic and go, well, I don't know which scholars are prominent in this field. I don't know who has contributed most to this conversation, who's speaking at the conventions, who's defining the terms. Let me find out. And one of the ways to find out is by consulting who the sources are citing, whom the sources are citing. So to close out, we are going to do a little bit of a lightning round of tips for navigating the LBC library. And I'll start with just a framework when using the LBC library. Is I like to encourage students that the library search bar and database search bars do not function the same way as a Google search or a Safari search. And so if you are going to type a full question into that search bar, you are not going to find the results that you are looking for. I can guarantee it. In fact, it'll just end in frustration. So familiarize yourself with how to actually search to yield the results that you're looking for. And what I mean by that is determining and developing a list of keywords, which are words related to the topic that you're studying. And don't be afraid to come up with synonyms, come up with a somewhat lengthy list of several keywords to swap out in your search, and to search each one of those keywords in quotation marks in the search bar, because then you are telling the library that you are looking for sources that contain these specific keywords. And so that is going to help you yield a lot more specific results.
Lightning tip that I would throw is just, there are librarians who are trained to show you around the room, And again, it's nice to do Christopher Columbus, discover land. But I think it's really good in the process to read whatever literature, whatever is provided in Canvas. But after getting that understanding, make an appointment to begin to find your way around and ask questions, even before, well, I have this topic and I don't know what to do. No, familiarize yourself with what is there. But once you then have that opportunity to meet with the librarian, ask those pertinent questions to bring you more insight, so that at least you're talking really to an expert that can begin to help you navigate the system. And it's not a one and done deal. Okay, it can take a lengthy period of time for you to get your wings, as it were. But again, when you're dealing with a topic, talk with an expert and then grow from there.
And I echo what Hannah was saying about keywords. And you brought up a great point about synonyms for your keywords. And don't be afraid to switch up the order in which you type in those keywords. I've discovered that sometimes switching around the order of your words will provide different articles that maybe you didn't get in your original search. And then another thing, LibGuides, exploring the LibGuides, even for courses that you're not in, sometimes will navigate you to different databases that you weren't aware existed. And that can be helpful, especially if you're writing a research paper on a specific theological topic. Sometimes you can discover databases that are just specific to theological writings. And so that can be helpful as well. That's my biggest tip for navigating the LBC library. There's so much good stuff in the LBC library. You just have to be willing to poke around.
Get in there.
I was going to discuss exactly what Hannah brought up, was there's a difference between the search bar and the database. I guess a tip would be, as you navigate the online LBC library, is to save citations like as you go. If you
Yes.
find something with that keyword, like you can click on it and you can save it, you can bookmark it, you can screenshot it so you can go back to save it somehow, because you never know if you're going to use that in the future. So,
And my students have said, make sure you're logged in to to the data. You know how sometimes it'll make you log into the database using your LBC account. Make sure you're logged in if you're trying to save those. Otherwise, it does not save it.
These are all really good quick tips. If you do want something that is longer than a quick tip, I'm going to shamelessly plug my workshop, Learning the Library, and I can link that in the show notes. Otherwise, a couple of quick tips would be to use that big, beautiful search bar on the library's homepage just for books, and to use the databases otherwise to look for other articles. Big, beautiful search bar just for books. I would also recommend, whenever you're doing those really technical scholarly journal articles and you're like, and you're looking at methodology, you're like, what? I don't understand what is going on. I would say skip all that, look at the abstract, and then look at the discussion section, and that will help you to get the meat of what the article is a lot faster.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks, everyone. And thank you all for tuning in and joining us today on the Ally Advantage. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.